thinking in my head, I don't know why I'm doing this. Like, I've given up in every corner of my life. I have given up to be here. I have worked my entire life to be here. I've never wanted to quit riding more than I have in this exact moment in time. Like, I just don't want to do it. And then I was like, okay, well,
stop the bus.
Yeah, stop driving back to California.
Hey everybody, welcome to today's episode of Mirror in the Stall. I'm Amber with Confidence and Connection Coaching, and today's guest is Lauren Billies. Lauren is a 3-day event trainer here in California. Today's conversation consisted of how she maintains her competition mindset, what it's like to compete at the Olympics, and so much more. I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. So this is Lauren, and Lauren, tell us a little bit about why horses, like what drew you to them and got you started with what you're doing.
Yeah, I started riding when I was like 8, but I had this like internal just desire to ride and be with horses my whole life. And so my parents were like totally city, didn't have any clue, and signed me up for like this backyard Western program. And it really fulfilled me in a way that I hadn't felt before, and ended up joining with this small backyard barn that was like that was a 3-day eventing barn. As a kid, I was, and probably even now, I was always too intense, overcommitted to whatever the theme was. And, but with horses, that didn't matter, you know? Right. And I love horses. And I've always had to reconnect with my why. When I was younger, my why was so apparent because I loved who I was when I was with horses. And I met my best friends. I met my best friends. I found my faith. I found my beliefs in life through my community of riders. As I got older, I think that, I don't know, I got a little bit lost in the competitive world and my competitive goals, and found my happiness again through reconnecting to my why, which to me is just that I feel my favorite version of myself when I'm with my horse.
Right. Perfect. So do you feel like at some level they mirror us?
Yeah. I mean, gosh, horses just present this like constant like life challenge, right? And we're constantly kind of filtered and how to change and become better people through kind of their struggles. And so I've definitely seen where my horses have been more stressed. Like for example, when I get ready to go to a big championship competition, when that stress level gets up, and if I can't learn to cope with that on my own, my horse also likewise carries that stress. So it's always a balance in terms, especially for me, because my goals are competitive, is just to really find my why, my peace, my calm when I'm riding, so that I can make an environment where my horse wants to learn and be a teammate with me.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah. What does that look like when you know you're kind of headed in that direction and you're like, like this is big?
Gosh, I've worked through that so much. One thing that I do is like I will make sure I'm under supervision a lot more than I normally am. Because I am like, I overdo it. You know, I want to work really super hard. I want to be better. But I also will set like very specific goals for each ride. So like, for example, I'll say, what is my weakness in my dressage test? Okay, I need to be straight down center line. Okay, so it gives me a very specific exercise to work on in a non-emotional way. And that's a big help. And then the other thing I try and do is not to ride with my phone on me, but just to really be present. And the last part of all of it is I make sure I give my horse a proper warm up, you know, give that 15 minutes for my horse to get warm, give that time for me to get warm, and just get in my flow state with my horse. We're really connecting and not getting like, typically for me, when I'm getting excited, I get quick, and I need to make sure I stay settled.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you have anything specific like that you do as far as separate from your horse that helps you keep that balance? Or is it mostly when you're at the barn is where you're focusing that?
What, how do you mean? Like which part?
Like, do you have any like extra stuff? Like, do you exercise? Is there like workout stuff? Is there anything extra that kind of keeps the balance, that ties into, if you weren't doing that and you were still trying to compete, that it wouldn't be
all consuming?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I work out every morning with my Pilates instructor, but to be quite honest, my focus when I'm there is always riding. So it's kind of insane. I live at my farm, so my life is farm life. But something that I really worked on internally is turning the dial up and turning the dial down. And so in my mind, I visualize a dial. And like one thing that I really struggled with this past year was I had a horse show where I rode 3 horses. I would have an 8 o'clock ride time, a 2 o'clock ride time, and a 5 p.m. ride time. And I felt like my dial was like turned up all day. And by the end of the day, I was so emotionally drained just from being like waiting for that last competition, that by the time I got to my last competition, I always felt like I was lacking something that I wanted to give to my horse or to my performance. So I since then really started working with my sports psychologist on this visual of, now I turn it up, now I turn it down. And like literally in my mind, I picture that dial going down so that I can really allow myself to relax and put myself in an environment where I can relax. So it's not maybe not watching the competition ring, might be going to get lunch with my mom or something. Mm-hmm. So I try and do that also on a daily basis.
Right.
When I walk in the door at my house, I make sure I like have an hour lunch and I turn the dial back down.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I know that there's a few people in here that have visualizations that they do. And we were just talking, I think it was yesterday, I was talking with somebody about that. It's almost the same as she's just started jumping again. So her horse was off and on lame. And then she's been building the confidence back up from rehab and stuff. And they're doing really well. And she's like, I really just want to go over a couple cross rails, just little ones. And she's like, but before I would get really anxious, and I was like, sit and visualize it how you want it to go first. Visualize where you take off from, visualize it. And if you can't visualize it, then you're definitely not, if you can't do it in your head, you're definitely not going to be able to do it outside. And I think that there's been a couple people in clinics and stuff where that was a thing. Like, what are we working on?
Yeah.
Be able to canter around without fear. Okay. Can you do that in your mind first? Well, no, I can't even do it in my mind. And I'm like, it's a very powerful thing, because I think your brain doesn't know the difference between if it's happening, if it's not. So being able to, like, for you, like before you go out and compete, like while you're standing there, I feel like, so I have a lot of friends that are eventers, and then I actually work with a lot of my clients are eventers.
Yeah.
And not because I'm an eventing trainer, but because the competition side of it, the pressure gets so much.
Yeah.
And I always find, like, it's funny because most of the time they want me there on their dressage day.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, interesting, because for me, I'm like, you're about to go gallop across a field and jump solid objects, but you want me there on dressage. So what for you, because I know it is for me, I'm like, me walking to that box to go start on a cross country course would make me but everyone's different. So what is it for you, like, about it throughout the different parts of what you do? What is the biggest one for you that you feel like you have to, like?
My personal anxiety comes from my horse's welfare. So I take this huge responsibility on my shoulders to make sure that my horse stays safe, and that I make decisions in a clear mind that keep my horse safe. So with that in mind, it's normally cross country day.
Right.
There's so much pressure, but you were talking about having a clear head. That's the only time my head has been clear, because I suffer with pretty severe anxiety, and going cross country is when I can't think about anything else. So, but in terms of the visualizing, what I add to that is not only doing it right, but I actually visualize what I do when it goes wrong. Because having a perfect ride is never a guarantee. So, like, it was interesting because I really have only ever allowed myself to visualize it perfect. And actually what I would do in my mind is I would go faster through the moments. If I couldn't think it was going to go perfect, I was like, okay, I just went over jump 3. Woo! Okay, I'm done with that. And I actually started talking to my sports psychologist about it. And she's like, no, go back to jump 3. If you don't hit the perfect distance, what are you going to do to get out of that? And so I could repeat that. And every time I go to make that mistake, I'd ride through it and get to the other side. And that gave me a lot of confidence to know in my mind that if I didn't hit the right place, I was going to get to the other side. And the other thing I did with that is like this summer, I was winning one of these huge competitions. It was one of my biggest qualifiers for the Tokyo Olympics. And I went into show jumping day and my horse just kind of pooped out right in front of the third oxer on the show jumping. And I had the rail down and I knew I was in second place at the second jump on the show jumping course. And I just turned on inside and like a lion came out of me, and I was like, we're not letting that happen again. And it ended up being a great ride, but it was really hard for me to go back and visualize that moment because it hurt me, to really think about that vulnerability. But what was really healing was to go back and ride it again and do it correctly. And say, I get to that spot, now what are you going to do? How are you going to make that different? Because that moment's going to happen again when you get super nervous, when you're going to canter across the ring or anything. In terms of anxiety for the competition day, I would say, quite honestly, the first time I went cross country, I was so afraid. And my cross country day at the Olympics was exactly the same. The fear level doesn't change. It's the same. The anxiety is exactly the same. It's just how much your old friend of fear. We're all afraid, but I know you, and I know you're a guaranteed possibility for this day, but I'm not going to listen to you today.
Right.
Yeah, that's a real thing that happens.
Yeah, like not letting it sneak up on you. Like, no, it's there. It's fine. It's
yeah.
And I feel like every time you up level, if you look at it as like it's the expectation, it's going to be there because I'm putting myself out there more for more people to see me.
Yeah.
The level of which you're competing is so much higher. So obviously the pressure gets up there. So it's for someone to ever expect that that's not going to show up is not a reality. Right. I mean, and I always feel like I have a couple friends that are in this interesting space where they're starting to put their stuff out there and really show up as who they are with programs they're creating or whatever. And the fear is like knocking them over. And it's about, well, that's how you're leveling up. Do you want to stay where you are? And that's fine too. But like, if you're really driven and there's like a higher purpose for you to reach this bigger space, like just expect it. Don't let it be something that's not supposed to happen. Like, no, that's supposed to happen. That's okay. That's what's supposed to show up. And then, I'm like, and the higher you go, the bigger it gets, but your skills to manage it also grow.
Yes.
Right. And so it's not about ever expecting it to not be there. Cause I think sometimes people think that
it's going to go away.
Yeah.
Not going to happen. There's a couple things. I have a funny story about that because like I said, I have a lot of anxiety, but the other thing that I focus on in my training is to be gravitated towards what makes me anxious. Because if I can grow my comfort zone, then I know that I'm more capable of achieving things. So there's a time and a place when you need to gain confidence that you do what you do well to keep confidence growing. But when I see something and I go, that makes me nervous, that means I've got to practice that. So in my practice, I try to gravitate towards what I know is going to bring my anxiety up so I can get better at it until I can't do it wrong.
Right.
But it was funny. I got this, I don't take any medications, and I had this CBD bar sitting on my counter a few months ago, and I didn't even realize what it was. It was like a protein bar. And so I opened it up and I ate it. And then I went to my, I went to my jump lesson, and I had not a care in the world. I was like, oh my gosh. Like normally I get like a little pitter patter. I'm like, okay. And without having anxiety, I could see my mistakes coming up, and you couldn't give me the care in the world to make a change. And I was like, okay, I just could not do it right because I didn't have my normal internal struggle that helps me make it better. And so it was really interesting because when I got done with the lesson, although I had no anxiety, I wasn't happy with the way I did. And then it helped me really realize I needed some of that fear and a little bit of that anxiety to make me safe and help me make good decisions. And actually those feelings keep me safe when I'm competing and riding. So you got to get comfortable with them and you need them.
Yeah. That's really good to think of it like that. Because if, I think for people that are like, I just want to get on my horse and I want to be able to walk, trot, and canter around the arena on a loose rein and not feel fear. It's like, well, where's the fear coming from? And what is it trying to highlight for you? Is it because your horse isn't safe, or is there something not safe about the situation? And look at it there and use that. But if it's just coming from inside and I'm looking at your horse and your horse is half asleep, I'm going to tell you it's time to push through and care a little bit less. So there's that balance of like, when do you let go and go, okay, I'm just going to let it happen like it's going to happen. I know that I know what I'm supposed to be doing. And instead of being so in my head, I'm just going to let, like you were saying, like that flow state where you're feeling and not thinking. But yeah, it's such an interesting thing to look at it like that. Like, I like that. Like, oh yeah, I didn't care, but I also didn't have that drive to go, well, how do I fix that? It's like, well, whatever.
Yeah.
Which you obviously can't do if you're trying to prepare to go to the Olympics or to like a competition. Like that stuff is in place for a reason.
It's there for a reason. When I went to the Rio Olympics 4 years ago, I was one of the youngest competitors there. And my coach at that games was like one of the top cross country course designers in the world. So we walked the cross country course and it was really freaking hard, like so hard. And I just gotten done walking it for the first time. And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, girl, you can do this, but you've got to do it your way. You know, you've got to do it the way that you're prepared to do this. And that might mean you're going to take a long route here. You're going to take a different route there. Or you're going to take a little more time, but you're going to be able to get through this. You're just going to have to do it within the confines of how you've been practicing. Okay. So I get done and Mark Todd, who, if anybody knows, an event rider, he's like legendary. This guy's been to the Olympics at 8 different Olympic games. He's 60. He's a badass. He's just totally fearless. And he walks up to my coach, Derek, and says, "That's the hardest mother effing cross country course I've ever seen in Olympic history." I was like, oh shit. And then Philip Dutton, who is like the equivalent of Mark Todd in the United States, next came up to Derek and said nearly the exact same thing. So I remember my day of cross country, I woke up and my mantra that I connected with, my why before I got there was, it feels like home. You know, when I'm on my horse, it feels like home. And my other mantra was, when I compete, I want to be the eye in the storm. There's like all this chaos around me and I'm just going to be this strong, quiet force in the middle of that. And I would like really visualize myself as that competitor, because that made me feel like amidst all the chaos, like I could see my way. And so we got on the bus and I am playing my, the other thing important to know is that like I was quite green at that games, but everybody that's sitting on the bus is like the Michael Jordan of my sport. It's like freaking Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Michael Jordan. They're all sitting around me and I'm like, and I was in there and Tim and Janelle Price are sitting there and all these top riders. And I have my headphones in and I'm just visualizing the eye of the storm and I have them cranked up as loud as I can. And I can still hear them saying, "What are you going to do about jump 4? Oh my gosh, jump 4. What are you going to do about, oh my gosh, jump 8? You know, they just are agonizing. And I was literally thinking in my head, I don't know why I'm doing this. Like I've given up in every corner of my life. I have given up to be here. I have worked my entire life to be here. I've never wanted to quit riding more than I have in this exact moment in time. Like, I just don't want to do it. And then I was like, okay, well,
stop the bus.
Yeah, stop, drive me back to California. And so I was just, you know, it's just like all consuming fear. All consuming. And it really, I thought this is the dumbest thing I've ever done, I swear. But I can't be the kid that like quits on the day of the Olympics. So, you know, I walk the cross country course. That gives me a lot of peace in the morning. I always walk my cross country course in the morning because I really want to connect to where I'm riding. I really want to be present in that space. So I get done, I'm feeling pretty good. We go to a viewing room when cross country starts. There's like 20 different TV screens. There's the VIPs of 3-day eventing in the entire world in that space. There's every coach, rider, vet, everybody's in there. And they're watching the first rider go out on course and she falls off. And the next rider falls off. And the next rider has a refusal. And so we kind of go through, I got to 8 riders before I was like so physically sick. I thought, okay, I'm done now. And I could see 2 go clean. So then I went back to the barn, literally to this day, blacked out, do not remember those like 4 hours, what I did, got on my horse. And I just remember like really hearing, because I'd worked on this before, is focus on only what you can control. Okay, how are you going to make this walk to the arena the best? Right. This one trot, how are you going to make your horse most laterally supple? This canter, how are you going to, you know, get your horse so he's feeling loose and confident for the fences? This warm-up jump, how are you going to, and I just went one thing at a time. And and honestly, I gained so much confidence in just focusing on only the things I could control. As I was walking out to the start box, my one friend that I had in the whole place came down the hill, and his horse ran out of gas and kind of half landed on the jump behind me. And it was just like that one last rattle. Like, are you going to get taken down by this? And I was so in control at that moment. I was like, not today. You know, it's like you're walking out to war. I mean, it really feels like that. And you get out there, and I just really focus when I'm in the box, turning into that fierce mother effing warrior, you know. And you have to leave the box the most confident person you can be, because your horse needs that. They can't feel this weak, meek little soul. They have to feel you like a lion being ready to be let out of the cage. And that's how I stepped out. And then when I'm on course, I will ground myself while I'm on course, like clear my mind, and then bring that intense energy back, and then do it a few times. Like, so my horse goes, deep breath. Okay, now gear up. We're going to another jump, because you're out there for 10 to 12 minutes.
Right.
But it's an incredible feat, you know, to be able to do that with your horse. And I think when you get done, you're just so connected to your connection with your horse. And it's so evident why we practice that every day. It's totally powerful.
Yeah, it's like that deepening of a relationship when you get through something that's really hard. It's like, okay, we made it through the other side.
Yeah.
And the bigger the thing, I feel the bigger the challenge on the other side of it is, like the bigger reward of like the deeper connection, and the bigger like, holy shit, like we just did that. Like that was insane. So even the buildup and the fear and the anxiety and stuff before creates this opportunity for even a bigger release and a bigger sense of like accomplishment, joy. So it's that balance, right? It's kind of, when you look at it like that, like it's so heavy right now. It's so big, like get me off this bus. Like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Knowing, oh, but on the other side of this, equal amount of like that joy and satisfaction and like appreciation for the hard work that you'd put in, and that if you got off the bus you wouldn't feel. Like you can get off the bus at any time, but like what's it gonna feel like on the other side when you're driving back to California, when you the person that quit that day? That's, you know.
Yeah. And I always think when I wake up for a big competition, you have two choices today. You can either go out in fear, or you can go out and make the best decisions you can to be the best rider you can on that day. And who do you want to be? And the obvious answer is, I want to make decisions to be my personal best on this day with what I'm given. You can't control the weather. You can't control if the footing's slippery, but what you can control is how you're going to respond to those factors. And so I always try and focus when I'm really overcome with fear is just, how can I be my best with what I've given? And I've made a decision and a personal commitment to thrive in this situation today. And when you do that, you know, even if you make a mistake, you know, you've put your best foot forward. And you can't ever be upset about that. Like, even if I would have gotten eliminated that day on cross country, sure, I'd have some regret, but at the same time, I feel I knew by my practice and warm up that I did the best I could that day. And that's really important. And that's what helps you grow. You can't be a victim of your circumstances, but you have to be a champion. And that's a real thing. Like my first Pan Ams, I fell off 4 fences from home and I would have been top 5. And that was so crummy. But I remember that. And I remember getting off the bus that day after cross country. And David O'Connor put his arm around me, and he was like, David was like my idol growing up. And he was like, hey, I want you to know that like that happened to me at my first Pan Am Games. And he still got a gold medal at the Olympics, you know. And he's like, and you're going to get past this. You're going to be better for it, and you're going to be back here. And he was so right. If I would have let that moment take me down, I never would have gotten to where I am now. And I'm guaranteed that's going to happen again to me.
Right.
This is part of what we sign up for.
Right. Yeah. And it's something about remembering that, like, you have the choice to shift your perspective on what it means. Like the story you tell yourself about, if I fell off, doesn't mean I should stop doing this, because some people go there, like, I shouldn't be doing this. Yeah. Or you go, no, it's just part of it. It's what happens. It like changes the entire experience of your life in general, but especially with horses, because like you do fall off. Like it's, and especially if you're out there at high levels doing really challenging things, like it's to be expected. You know what I mean? Yeah. So how do you help your clients that get to that space when you look across the arena or you're helping someone warm up and you're like, oh, someone's going,
yeah.
like, uh-oh.
Yeah. So
is there anything specifically that you do, or what does that look like for you?
I have a few different coping mechanisms for my clients, and it really depends on the client. We practice their warm up together. Like, for example, one client, she can't do a very long warm up because that makes her anxious. Doing a shorter warm up keeps her really calm. And I always think about the show when I'm developing a practice for my clients as the test, and the homework was all done at home. So you have to know whatever you're presented with at the show is below what you probably practiced at home. So when I look out at the ring, a lot of times I'll stop and I'll pull them in and we'll do some grounding exercises. One thing that I do personally is I try and picture myself in a redwood forest and just feel my feet in the dirt and feel my weight down. And we practice that with them, like, okay, feel your breath, calm down, go down to the earth, feel your feet in the stirrups, feel your hands in the reins, just be present here in this moment. And then a lot of times once we kind of get connected back to our horse, we'll go through the test. Okay, what are you going to do when you go up center line? Okay, I'm going to trot in. I'm going to halt at X. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And when you can start to map it out as individual exercises, it looks a lot more attainable. Okay, you're going to jump fence 1. What are you going to do at fence 2? Okay, I'm going to do this. And don't think about the whole thing. You got to think about one thing. So something that I will tell my clients, especially in terms of cross country, is once you've walked the course and you know what you're going to do in your mind, all you can think about is fence 1 now. You don't get to think about fence 5. You haven't even jumped fence 1. Your only goal right now is fence 1. And you have to think only about what's in front of you. Otherwise, the whole task becomes far too overwhelming.
Right. Yeah. And that's like life in general, right? It's like being in the moment. Anxiety is presented when you're worried about the future. So it's saying, we're here at jump 1. Why are you at jump 5 worried about stuff that's going to go wrong? You still have 4 jumps to go before you right? Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I definitely think that's such a big thing because people go so fast. Their minds work so fast. And it's great because what we talked about in the beginning of these first weeks was emotions and how sometimes we're so far away from how we feel about things and unaware. Yeah. And that we want to push away, I call them teaching emotions. So you have the positive emotions and then the teaching emotions. There is no negative emotion. That emotion is there to serve you. It's to help you. It's to support you. It's to teach you. Yeah. Your decision to either look away from it and go, I need to numb. I need to not look at it. I need to go watch Netflix. I need to, overspend or drink or whatever it is, your choice of how you numb. Right. Because you're taught that from like such a young age. It's like, oh, you're crying. What's wrong? How do we fix it? Instead of looking at, but why is it presenting itself? And so having that awareness of, oh, I feel one of those emotions right now. I wonder what it means. I wonder why I'm feeling that way. Are you worried about jump 5 or are you worried about jump 1? Like, oh, okay. And kind of calling it out and going, oh, here, this is why. Oh, okay. So it's not this like subconscious like run of stuff that's just going constantly and running your life. It's like being aware and being in the moment and going, but what is it right now? Oh, okay. It's not that big of a deal. Mm-hmm. Like I can do that and I can do that and then I can do that, and letting the momentum go. But I feel like it's like going to the gym. It's like you can't go to the gym and work out once and expect all your muscles to stay the same. It has to be such a high priority, especially the higher up you go with competition, to be aware of the practices that you do every time. And so having those rituals every time. And I love the grounding thing because I feel like when people get to that space where they're like, you can tell they're just like, you're not even in your body right now. I always say that, like, feel the sand under your boots. What does it feel like? And I do a meditation with them where I go up through their body, like, what is it? And then feel your ankles and feel. Stop thinking for a minute, just for a minute and feel things. And then now what are we going to do? Right.
Sometimes too, what I would do before, this is when I was like pretty young, I would, this thing, how do I make it big again? Oh man. How do I do that? There it is. When I was young, and I just don't know how I even got to this, was I would, before I went in the ring, I'd think about a day at summer camp that I never wanted to unlive. like, just disappear for like 30 seconds. And that's what the grounding is all about, isn't it? It's like connecting to just that wholesome feeling that you love in your heart, because that's why I ride, because I love that feeling of just being one with my horse. So yeah, if you like, for me, I have this forest of sequoias that I visited, and I remember meditating in that space when I was there. And I remember it was a really spiritual moment for me, just being there and thinking, gosh, I sit at home, I'm so worried about all this BS. And then I go in this place, and these trees are literally 2,000 years old. And they've been standing here the test of time. They've been rained on, snowed on, and they've had fire all over them. And they're standing in this beautiful meadow. And when I'm worried, they're growing, and so it just helped me kind of think, okay, like, this is my peace place. So when I start to really build, and that is where I go, and I'll practice that. Like this morning, I already did it once. I'll practice that meditative space even when I'm not stressed. So it's very familiar in my mind.
Right.
And I think that's really important, that we practice meditating even when you're not nervous. And that there's something that I did before I went to the Olympics, and now I tie it back into my normal life. And this is something that I practice with my clients, is you come up with your why, which is why you ride. And that's a hugely revealing question. It's very personal to every person. But then from your why, you create a mantra or like a mission statement. So mine for the Olympics was, it feels like home, the eye of the storm. So when I feel my best, when I feel my most clear-headed mind, I would say that to myself. It feels like home right now. I feel like the eye of the storm. And I'd start to connect that mantra to a physical feeling in my body. And so I'd connect it, and I'd make sure that was connected for a few weeks. And then when I'd go to the big stage, I'd say it to myself when I was feeling not that way. And because those two things are tied, the emotions with the words, saying it out loud brings the peace back in.
Right.
And so it's important to practice these, meditative practices outside of the ring, outside of stress and anxiety, because it helps you bring that peace to the ring.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, it's key, because that's like saying you're never going to stress your horse out, and practice that stuff at home, like adding in things that worry them. Like I'm always telling people, I have a lot of people that come from a place of anxiety, had accidents and stuff like that, and they're kind of starting over. And when we get into the round pen, I practice having them move them forward, but bring their emotions up, and then stop, and then have them ground themselves, and then let the horse switch over nervous systems, and over and over. And I find what people start to do when they go home, or they go back to wherever they were, is they're always trying to keep the horse calm. And I was like, you're not helping them practice what it feels like to be up and then come back down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're not going to be able to control if like the plastic baggie flies past.
Yeah.
But what you can do for yourself and them is, when they feel that sensation of excitement, because they don't know the difference, right? We don't know the difference between excitement, fear. Viscerally, it feels the same in our body.
Yeah.
So it's then going, oh, I know what this feeling is. It's familiar. And I know exactly how to self-soothe myself back into a place where I can think through it.
Yes.
So the importance of, yes, practicing it at home, but making sure you do put yourself up, so that you go, okay, this is how I unwind myself. Not in the middle of the Olympics, but like before, like, this is the experience. This is the feelings that I'm going to feel.
Yeah.
How many situations can I put myself in where I can practice, where the pressure is not so big?
Yeah.
Unwinding that sensation, right?
Yeah.
That's a big thing.
It's true. It's true, because when you go, there's nothing like practicing to be actually in a competition ring, right? Because you're going to be different no matter what when you go into the biggest environment you've ever been in. And quite honestly, for me, when I was 8, that was Fresno County Horse Park. And now that I'm older with more experience, that's going to be Tokyo this year. So, but the feeling is the same, and your emotions change when you're there. But the biggest thing to remember is not to change your riding when you're there. So I always make sure that oh gosh, my phone is doing that again. I always make sure, like, this is something else I'll tell my clients, is your horse doesn't know the difference. Horse doesn't know you're moving up. You just have to ride exactly the way you rode when you were at the level below. And so when you're pressured to be in that big environment, don't change who you were, because your practice led you to that moment. And you need to be confident that your practice prepared you for it. So in that, you just have to be sure that you stay the same, because that's what your horse is used to. Even when they get nervous, you stay that same calm place because you're ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weaving that like little bits of certainty that you can find in like all the other uncertainty. Like, for you, what do you feel like this, maybe not the most important, but a big lesson that you've learned from training and from going through all of these experiences that you can pull into your personal life, like when you're just doing life? Like, what do they mirror to you? What do they teach you? What is it, like a lesson you're like, oh, this carries over through everything, and something that kind of anchors in that one thing that helps?
Last year was and this year's proved to be exactly the same, was a really trying year for me. My top horse last year almost died from colic surgery. And just recently, as I was telling you before, I almost lost my young horse to a really odd infection. And last year, I didn't quite know like how I would survive without Purdy. And so when I finally got to ride him again, I was just like so teary-eyed and so thankful for him.
Right.
And something that I really took away from that whole experience is this extreme feeling of gratitude. And gratitude brought me joy when I was riding, like just to be thankful for just to be thankful for like being somewhere. I think before I'd almost, not I hadn't taken it for granted, but I felt like I earned it and I deserved to be there. And this last year, riding Purdy and qualifying for the Tokyo Olympics, like every competition I had, I went with this extreme gratitude that I was even getting the opportunity to qualify him again. And it changed our relationship on such a deep level that we just fell in love with the sport again. And it was totally incredible. And I had so much fun competing him, and we just grew together so strong. Like, we had our most competitive season to date, and we did less shows because he's an older horse and I wanted to save him. But I think gratitude from that situation really brought me home, at home and in my personal life, because gratitude grounds you and it keeps you present in the moment. Because I mean, it's so cliche. We say all the time, you don't know what can happen tomorrow, but you really don't. Like, I was about to load Purdy up to go to a horse show to get ready to go to Fair Hill. And instead I loaded him up to a horse trailer with him refluxing his stomach fluid out of his nose, praying with him in the trailer and thinking he was going to die in the next 30 minutes.
Right.
So like that, things can change. And I really have felt like in the last year, this sense of gratitude has really changed the way I ride and the way that I present myself to my horses now. Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's such a good thing, to a skill set almost. And that practice of, you are your stories, you're your perception. And knowing like, okay, there's something from this situation that is so hard and so horrible. Like, what can I pull from it so that it's not just wasted?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we had chatted a little bit in the group about your emotional home. So when things either go really good or really bad, or when stuff comes up, like, you default to some people get angry really fast. Some people go to worry. Some people go to joy automatically.
Yeah.
And knowing where you default to, but then going, okay, I can be aware of that. This is really hard. But then being able to pull later, that situation sucked. It didn't mean anything as far as like, I'm not supposed to be doing this, or going to that place. Like, this is terrible, and being wrapped up in that negative space.
Yeah.
Instead going, oh, but I get to ride, like getting on again and going, oh my God, like, I don't even care if this is all I get. Like, I'm, you know what I mean? Like, right here in this moment, this is the most important thing. And being so present to that and going, I'm so grateful for this, is so huge. And I think some people cut themselves short of that because they stay stuck in that, why is this happening to me? And I had a client the other day, and I've said this like a million times since she said it to me. She was like, the difference between a why with a question mark and a why with an explanation point. Yeah. Like, why is this happening to me? Like, why? Instead of actually looking at it and go, but why is this happening to me? Questioning it and being curious. And going, where can I grow from this situation that even seems really hard? what can I get from it as far as like a gift or like a lesson I'm supposed to be learning, rather than just being so blocked off and angry and frustrated that you miss out on that piece too.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing.
Yeah.
That's a big thing.
Yeah. There is a lot of validity in that. I think that I always go back to, you write your own story, and just on more of a, I don't know, something that I watched this last year, like when you get done with a big competition, you have a way to tell your story. And not even this last year, this happened to me a few years ago, but like if I had to stop, I could say, oh yeah, it wasn't my best weekend. My horse stopped, and he never stops. Instead, I say, this was the craziest weekend. I did some shit I've never done before. And we totally got through, and we're going to do it again.
Right.
I mean, there's a total difference. It's the exact same thing that happened, but being able to write your story with that gratitude and that joy really gives hope for your future, and helps you, I think, really connect to why you're doing it and how you're going to get better from the experiences that you've had. That's critical. And
Right.
it's all about how you perceive your experiences.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's like everything.
Yeah.
The only thing that you can control is how you think about things.
Yes.
And being aware of that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to be respectful of time for sure. Is there anything else that you want to add? Any story you want to add? Anything that you feel like you want to say?
Gosh, I don't know. This has been really cool. It's like a little therapy session for me. So I hope that your clients get something out of it, because it's been helpful for me too.
Yeah, I think it's just being able to have conversations where it's like, no, being vulnerable and saying like, no, like that's ridiculous to think that at any level you're ever going to get where there is not fear. It's not pushing it away. It's like, that's just part of it. It's not a big deal, but how are you going to manage it? You know what I mean? Like, where do we get to go from here? What story do we get to tell?
Yeah.
So good. Yay. So good.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you so much for joining us and sharing with us. Like, I'm 100% positive people will get exactly what they need from it.
Good.
Perfect.
Good.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Bye.
Bye.